Hello and welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. Today in this part 17, let's focus on the questions based on the section Describe Azure Management and Governance. You will get 30 to 35% of the questions from this section. Such an important section it is. So let's not wait any further and let's jump and prepare for AZ-900 exam. So coming up on your screen, the first question for today, question number 301. The question says that how can the IT department ensure that the employees at the company's retail stores can access company's application only from the approved tablet devices? Your options are SSO, which is single sign-on. The second option is conditional access. And the last one is multi-factor authentication. And the correct answer for this question is option B, conditional access. And now let's move on to the other similar questions, and then you will understand when to choose SSO, when to choose conditional access, which we chose in this question as well. And then you will also understand what are we using multi-factor authentication for. So let's move on. Here comes question number 302. It says that how can the IT department use biometrics properties such as facial recognition to enable delivery drivers to prove their identities? Once again, the options given are same: SSO, conditional access, and multi-factor authentication. And in this case, my friends, the correct answer is option C, multi-factor authentication. And why we have chosen multi-factor authentication? Well, authenticating through multi-factor authentication can include something the user knows, something the user has, and something the user is. And in this question, we have facial recognition, which comes under something the user is. And similar to this question, there can be more questions. For example, instead of asking or saying facial recognition and instead of asking for biometrics properties, they can also give you options such as authentication using SMS, or maybe asking for the birthday or any other question from the user. And all these would come under something the user knows or something the user has. But I'm really sure that you got the gist when to choose multi-factor authentication. Now let's move on and take the question number 303. It says that how can the IT department reduce the number of times the user must authenticate to access multiple applications? Options are SSO, conditional access, and multiple authentication. And this time, my friends, the correct answer is option A, SSO, which is single sign-on. And just so you know, single sign-on or SSO enables a user to remember only one ID and one password to access multiple applications. And I'm really sure that many of you are already using single sign-on in the corporate world. And before moving any further, for the viewers who are joining us here for the first time, please note that we have already covered 300 very important and the latest questions on AZ-900 in this latest 2023 series. And you do not want to miss any of these questions. All the questions are very important. They will not only help you get good marks, but also clear a lot of your Azure concepts. And links to all the previous parts are available in the description box. And coming up now is question number 304. It says, how can companies allow some users to control the virtual machines in each environment, but prevent them from modifying networking and other resources in the same resource group or Azure subscription? Your options are option A, create a role assignment through Azure Role-Based Access Control, better known as Azure RBAC. The second option is create a policy in Azure Policy that audits resource usage. The third one is split the environment into separate resource group. And the correct answer for this question is option A, create a role assignment through Azure Role-Based Access Control, also known as Azure RBAC. And in case you do not know what is Azure RBAC, well, Azure RBAC enables you to create roles that define access permissions. You might create one role that limits access only to the virtual machines and a second role that provides administrators with access to everything. And that's the exact ask in our question as well. That's why Azure RBAC is the correct answer. Now let's move on to the question number 305. It says your company plans to migrate to Azure. The company has several departments. All the Azure resources used by each department will be managed by a department administrator. So what are the two possible techniques to segment Azure for the departments? Your options are multiple Azure Active Directory or Azure AD directories. The second option is multiple subscriptions. Then we have multiple regions, and the last one is multiple resource groups. And please pay attention, you have to choose two possible techniques. The correct answer for this question is option B, multiple subscriptions, and option D, multiple resource groups. And friends, both subscriptions and resource groups are very important concept in Microsoft Azure. Let me give you more details on each of these. So an Azure subscription is a container for the Azure resources. It is also a boundary for permissions to resources and for the billing. You are charged monthly for all the resources in a subscription. A single Azure tenant can contain multiple Azure subscriptions. Now coming up to the Azure Resource Group, well, Azure Resource Group is a container that holds the related resources for an Azure solution. The resource group can include all the resources for the solution or only those resources that you want to manage as a group. Now friends, I want your full attention now. A very important concept to enable each department administrator to manage the Azure resources used by that department, which is asked here in the question. You will need to create a separate subscription per department. And once you have these separate subscription, you can then assign each department administrator as an administrator for each of these subscription to enable them to manage all the resources in that subscription. And this is how you can take care of this business need using multiple subscription and multiple resource groups. And in case you want to understand more on Azure subscription and Azure resource group, these are the videos that you need to watch. Both these videos are from the Azure Fundamental series. This is one series that you must watch in case you are Azure beginner, as this series will cover all the concepts that you need to know to get started with Azure career. And now comes question number 306. It says, where can a legal team access information around how the Microsoft Cloud helps them to secure sensitive data and comply with the applicable law and the regulations? Your options are Microsoft Privacy Statement, Trust Center, and the last option is Online Services Terms. And the correct answer for this question is option B, Trust Center. And this documentation here will help you get started with the Azure Trust Center. And you can see that the Trust Center work on three tenets: security, privacy, and compliance. And as always, you can find the link for this documentation in the description box. And now comes question number 307. It says, where can the company access details about the personal data Microsoft processes and how the company processes it, including for Cortana? Your options are Microsoft Privacy Statement. The second option is the Azure Compliance Documentation, and the last one is Microsoft Compliance Offerings. And the correct answer for this question is option A, Microsoft Privacy Statement. So Microsoft Privacy Statement provides information that's relevant to a specific service, including Cortana. And now comes question number 308. It says that your company's website has a business critical data that must be secured at any cost. To replicate data, your business needs to copy data to a secondary region from the primary region across multiple data centers that are located many miles apart. Which storage option is best for you? Your options are Premium Storage, Zone Redundant Storage or ZRS, Geo Redundant Storage, which is GRS, and then we have last one, Locally Redundant Storage, also known as LRS. And the correct answer for this question is option C, Geo Redundant Storage. So friends, Geo Redundant Storage or GRS replicates your data to a secondary region that is in a different geographical location from the primary region. And that's exactly what our question was also asking, a secondary region from the primary region across multiple data centers that are located many miles apart. That's why Geo Redundant Storage is the correct answer. And for those who want to deep dive and learn all the options in Microsoft Azure Storage Redundancy, this is the documentation. Here you can read all about these options, a very critical and important Microsoft service, because any good application always thinks about building redundancy across the application. And here you can also learn about different redundancy options like locally redundant storage. You can also learn about zone redundant storage, so on and so forth. And now comes question number 309. It says, which is the best way for the companies to ensure that they only deploy cost-effective virtual machine SKU sizes? And your options are: create a policy in Azure Policy that specifies the allowed SKU sizes. And the second option is periodically inspect the deployment manually to see which SKU sizes are used. The third one is create an Azure RBAC role that defines the allowed virtual machine SKU sizes. And the correct answer for this question is option A, create a policy in Azure Policy that specifies the allowed SKU sizes. Now let's move on to the question number 310. It says, which is the likely best way for the companies to identify which billing department each Azure resources belongs to? Your options are: track resource usage in a spreadsheet. The second option is split the deployment into a separate Azure subscriptions where each subscription belongs to its own billing department. And the last option is apply a tag to each resource that includes the associated billing department. And the correct answer for this question is option C, apply a tag to each resource that includes the associated billing department. And what are tags? Well, tags provide extra information or metadata about your resources. And you can create a tag that's named billing department, whose value would be the name of the billing department. And then you can use Azure Policy to ensure that the proper tags are assigned when the resources are provisioned. And that's how you can enforce the use of tags in case any new resource is created. And now comes question number 311. It says your company has virtual machine hosted in Microsoft Azure. The virtual machines are located in single Azure virtual network named VNet1. The company has users that work remotely. The remote workers require access to the virtual machines on VNet1. You need to provide access for remote workers. What should you do? Your options are: configure site-to-site VPN or configure VNet to VNet VPN. The third option is configure point-to-site VPN. And the fourth option is configure direct access on a Windows Server 2012 server virtual machine. And the last one is configure a multi-site VPN. And the correct answer for this question is option C, configure a point-to-site P2S VPN. So friends, please understand, a point-to-site VPN gateway connection lets you create a secure connection to your virtual network from an individual client computer. P2S VPN is also a useful solution to use instead of S2S VPN when you have only few clients that you need to connect to a virtual network. And in case you want to learn more about VPN gateway design, this is a very good documentation from Microsoft. Here you can understand and learn about all the site-to-site VPN, point-to-site VPN, VNet to VNet connection, site-to-site and express route coexisting connection, and a lot more. Here you can also see you have high available connections and also some next steps that you might need to take in case you want to implement a virtual private network. Now let's move on to the question number 312. It says single sign-on or SSO is a dash method. Your options are a configuration, a validation, an authentication, and the last one is an authorization. And the correct answer for this question is option C, an authentication. So basically, my friends, single sign-on is an authentication method that enables users to sign in the first time and access various applications and resources by using same password. Coming up next is question number 313. It says that you have an on-premises network that contains several servers. Now you plan to migrate all the servers to Azure. Now you need to recommend a solution to ensure that some of the servers are available even if a single Azure data center goes offline for an extended period. What should you include in the recommendation? Your options are availability set, fault tolerance, scalability, elasticity, and the last one is low latency. And the correct answer for this question is option B, fault tolerance. And this is because fault tolerance is the ability of a system to continue to function in the event of a failure of some of its components. So even if some of the components of your applications are failing, fault tolerance will make sure that your application is still working and available to the users. And with that, let's move on to the question number 314. It says, in Azure, what do you understand by application availability? Your options are: application is available to high-end users And the second option is the individual SLA of each resource. The last one is the overall time that a system is functional and working. And the correct answer, of course, is option C, the overall time that a system is functioning and working. Now let's move on to the question number 315. It says you are the data engineer for your company. An application uses no SQL database to store data. The database uses key value and wide column no SQL database type. The developers need to access data in the database using an API. Now you need to determine which API to use for the database model and type. Which are the two APIs should you use? Please pay attention. You have to choose two APIs. Your options are Cassandra API. The second one is Table API. Third one is SQL API. Then we have Gremlin API. And the last one is MongoDB API. And the correct answer for this question is option A, Cassandra API, and option E, MongoDB API. And this is because both Cassandra API and MongoDB API has key value pair, which was the ask of the question as well. And here comes the question number 316, which says which two types of customers are eligible to use Azure Government to develop a cloud solution. Each correct answer presents a complete solution and each correct selection is worth 1 point. Your options are a Canadian government contractor. The second one is a European government contractor. Third one is a United States government entity. And the fourth one is a European government entity. And the last option that we have is a United States government contractor. And the correct answer for this question is option C, a United States government entity, and option E, a United States government contractor. So looking forward to learn more on Azure Government? I'm sure you do. So this is the Microsoft documentation which tells you what is Azure Government. Here you can read that Azure Government is a cloud environment specifically built to meet compliance and security requirements for the US government. Please note this is only for the US government. And this mission critical cloud delivers breakthrough innovations to the US government customers and their partners. Azure Government applies to the government at any level, from state to local government to the federal agencies, including department and defense agencies. The most important point to note here is whenever you are seeing Azure Government, for now it is only restricted and pointing towards the United States government. And now comes the question number 317. It says this question requires you to evaluate the underlying text to determine if it's correct. And here you can see that we have this underlined text. Let's read the entire statement. It says your company implements Azure policies to automatically add a watermark to Microsoft Word documents that contain credit card information. Now friends, you have to review this underlined text, and if you think that this underlined text makes the entire statement correct, in that case you have to choose the first option, which is no change needed. And in case you think that this underlined text needs to be corrected, in that case you have to choose between the options given here, which are DDoS protection, and then we have Azure Information Protection. The last one is Azure Active Directory Identity Protection. And in this case, my friends, you have to choose option C, Azure Information Protection, in case you want to automatically add a watermark to the Microsoft Word documents that contain credit card information. So Azure Policies is not the correct service to achieve this business requirement. And a good place to understand what is Azure Information Protection is this documentation here. It says that Azure Information Protection is a part of Microsoft Purview Information Protection, which was formerly known as Microsoft Information Protection or MIP. Microsoft Purview Information Protection helps you discover, classify, protect, and govern sensitive information wherever it lives or travels. And of course, you can note that AIP extends labeling and classification functionality provided by Microsoft Purview with the following capabilities. And you can read more on this documentation as your time permits. But for now, let's move on to the next question. Question number 318. It says define availability sets. Your options are a group of instances for your application in an availability zone. The second option is a logical grouping of virtual machines that allows Azure to understand how your application is built to provide for redundancy and availability. And the last option is set of resources. And the correct answer for this question is option B. And now let's move on to the question number 319. It says multi-factor authentication in Azure Active Directory is used to provide access to the resources based on an organizational policies, yes or no? And in this case, my friends, this is an incorrect statement. And that's why we have picked no for this question. And I'm pretty sure that you are eager to know what is the service to provide access to the resources based on organizational policy. So let's find out in the next question. And here comes the question 320. It says conditional access in Azure Active Directory is used to provide access to the resources based on organizational policies. Yes or no? And yes, this time this is the correct statement. That's why we have chosen a yes. So now you know conditional access is the correct tool. What is conditional access? Well, conditional access is the tool used by Azure Active Directory to allow access to the resources based on identity signals. Conditional access is more refined MFA or multi-factor authentication method. And this is a very good documentation in case you want to understand what are multi-factor authentication and conditional access. And links to all the documentation that are referred in this video are right there in the description box. And friends, towards the end of this video, I want to say if you like our work and think that we are doing a good job, then please do not leave the video without pressing the like button. A small thing for you, but this is the only way for us to grow. And please share our videos or tag us on your social media platforms so that we can reach to more and more wonderful cloud learners just like you. And in case you are new here today, please do not miss to subscribe to the channel to get the timely notifications of all our cloud learning videos. So that's all for today. Any queries or doubts, any question is not clear, please do reach me in the comment section. I will see you in the next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.
If this video has added any value in your learning, a like and subscribe is highly appreciated. Share this video in your family and friends to spread and expand their learning. Your comments and feedback give me a chance to interact with you, and I look forward for them. We will meet again in our next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.